Yeah, back from holiday now, just looking at the markets, absolute pillaging across some sectors, well, markets overall, but especially the gold and silver miners. First got my attention. The commodities were just down across the board pretty much. So I'm not sure if it was just a top that finally was way overdue. Was it some technicals? Maybe was it some macro data, some poor earnings, or maybe the BOJ, possibly the BOJ Yield Curve Control that sent markets down and the yen up, which would mean the dollar down, but the DXY had a green day, so it's a little all over the place, but the charts don't lie. And here you can see the S&P very much a bearish engulfing candle. It is kind of at support, you can see, but I reckon we're going to go lower. Today was pretty brutal. Some other like the Dow Jones, the Russell 2000, they've got very much bearish engulfing candles that make it suggest that there's more downside, and that's very, very much bearish engulfing. I'd be surprised if it just tomorrow just reverses and holds this line, this 450, 451 line. So S&P is at support technically, pun intended, but no, I think we're going to go lower, at least test the ascending, possibly all the way back down to 444. I think that's a very strong down day. And remember how high we are. We're almost at market highs. So Nasdaq, very bearish engulfing, holding that support also, more the ascending one. I think we're going to go lower. I think as soon as we close below 371, especially 370, there's more downside. So it looks very, very weak now, and we're very high. Dow Jones also hitting resistance. That was a late runner, but I think we're going to go back down to this breakout zone, 34,600-ish on the Dow. So I think there's a little bit more downside, and I do think tomorrow will be red. Russell 2000, well, it was down the most, very bearish engulfing. Look at that. Just started at the highs, the local highs, ventured higher, just closed a low close compared to last trading days, ventured even lower. So for me, also one that needs to go down further back to 190 breakout. So very similar to the Dow Jones. For me, across the board, especially the Dow and the Russell, that are usually quite weak on the way down, they have to go down. And the S&P and the Nasdaq, they might not be the weakest ones, but they were weak today and they're very high. They got a long way down to go. So I think more downside across the board. Now, the banking stocks, red, is that a false breakout? No, it's probably a real breakout. It's just getting dragged down by other influences, other markets, And remember, the banks are weak. I mean, we had was it Pacific West that just had to be bought up, So, I mean, the banking crisis is still there. They are driven by yields rising, and yields are still rising. We'll get to that in a second. So, the fundamental reason behind the source behind the banking crisis persists, and exacerbates, I would say. KBE tagged resistance perfectly. I didn't think it would get there. It did, tagged it back down. It's not the weakest looking set of candles, but just knowing what I know here, I think we just have to go back down to this breakout of 40. Nice round number. And to be honest, there'll probably be more downside if we do have some follow through here. Sorry, but the banks have to go down. KRE also tagged its own little resistance, didn't rise as much, but that was the weakest of the banks. Also, not the weakest looking set of candles compared to what we've seen, but yeah, no, I think we're going to have more follow through. So, markets and banks down with signs of continuation. Let's look at the yields. The 1 year always doing the same thing, just sideways up, little retracement after it's gone up a lot, sideways up, sideways up. Today, sideways. And actually, the others were all up. I mean, the market's reset. It always does this late in the day, but you can see what kind of a day it is. Look, with Thursday, big, big day for yields. Big, strong, bullish engulfing. Look at the 2 year, very, very important. That looks like it wants to go back up to 5.1, test the highs, sideways, make new highs. This is what I've always thought is going to happen. Just staircase higher. I mean, look, we reversed a lot. It was a nice move up the last couple of weeks. We came back down to support and just basically sideways up with small reversals on the way. But look at the 10 year though. That's such a pronounced move up. Massive, massive candle, blasted through its last high easily, unlike the others, It's just stronger. It's a shame it's reset, but I think it was the strongest one today. But look at that. It just wants to get to, well, look, we closed above 4. We're closed above 4% on the 10-year. And this really, for me, it spells the immediate nature of yields just going up. It's just going to go up 4.1 sideways higher, a little reversal here and there, but where are we going? To new highs in the yields. 30-year, look at that. It's really the longer out yields that were very strong today. That looks like it's almost like they're all going to converge at their highs at the same time, and there was just more catching up to do with the 10 and the 30, especially the 30. But just such huge moves today. That is really worth paying attention to. That got my attention. Let's look at the dollar, but really that's really worth paying attention to. Now I'm watching I've actually got the 10-year chart up along with the S&P, the GDX, gold, and whatever else I'm watching. But I've got the 10-year and the dollar up together. Look at the dollar. Strong day, up 0.75%. Now look, US dollar, Japanese yen, that was down. So that Japanese yen yield curve control by the BOJ, that's special headlines. I think that's why the markets went down, although there are several reasons possibly, but that's definitely one of them. But despite the dollar being down against the Japanese yen, it was still up overall, even though the Japanese yen makes a big part of the DXY basket. But look at that. Just, at one point we were below 100.8. That was what I was looking for, a flush, like a continuation. But look at that, just reversal up. And to be honest, now, and you've got to adapt. Now that we've got this huge bullish engulfing, it's unlikely. I mean, yeah, we're near resistance of 102, but because of the news that's driven it, and actually, if we look at the US dollar, Japanese yen, that could probably go back down to here. But overall, if I just look at the DXY, I do feel like we might, and you've got to accommodate for this possibility, we could take out this 102. Didn't think it would happen, but look, here we are. And then next support for me, next resistance, sorry, would be this descending line here. I think that makes sense, which, to be honest, I mean, if it happens tomorrow and it's one go, it would be just under 103, right? So I think 103 will be resistance. Now, if it takes a couple more days, that'll probably be 102 point. Well, I don't know when it will happen, but, it won't be 103. It'll be just below that. But for now, it's 103 pretty much should be resistance. This descending anyway, we'll look at when it starts to happen, but that's a very strong day. That suggests continuation. Maybe we have the dollar up, markets down, just fear trade, risk off sort of atmosphere. But you'd think gold is going to go up in that atmosphere, but it didn't today. It definitely didn't. Let's take a look at commodities. So let's start with copper. Well, look, when the market's down and the dollar's up, you can expect copper to be down, and it was, but to be honest, it wasn't down as much as it should be. So for me, copper's very strong. It's waiting to break out of 3.95 and squeeze to 4.2. I still think that's what it wants to do. It's just being delayed right now. But despite the huge forces against it, it wasn't even down 1%. So for me, copper, strong down day. I mean, strong day despite being down. Natural gas, this one, disappointing. I didn't think it would really care about market action or the dollar. I don't know, maybe this was just down on its own technicals or whatever, but it's, down tagged, the descending. This is why I leave the descending even when you break out of it, because it acts as support when it tags it. It's tagged it. I'm going to delete this now. It's done its, well, I didn't have to. I'll leave it for one extra day, but it's done its job. In 1 or 2 days, I can delete it. But I hope, which is a horrible thing to say, that we just sort of curl, go back up, test this and close above 2.75 to 2.76, and then we rush higher and squeeze, and the rest is history. But yeah, for now we tag the descending, which is okay. But I would have preferred some continuation on the upside. I still don't think we're going to break down. I still have a bit of faith in natural gas, and I'm long, of course, 2 out of 5 tranches. Oil definitely stood out today, up in a sea of red, especially for commodities. So, and where were we? We were tagging this descending, and this is not really resistance for me. It's just something I saw on the way. I'll delete it. To me, it's really this zone, 82, 83. That's where you want to go. And I'm surprised it's just keep going. It's still going up. So let's see If it was to go back down and start test lower, there would be nothing wrong with the bullish trend. So oil just keeps staircasing higher, very impressive. But for me, resistance definitely 82, 83. You're not allowed to just go through that like you've been doing here. So let's see, but very impressive continuation with oil. And to be honest, when you're green on a red day like this, if everything reverses tomorrow everywhere else and there's green across the board in commodities, I think oil will still have to be green and it'll be very strong actually. So definitely still strong. Uranium, well, is that because the market was down? Uranium tends to do that when markets are going lower. Is that because the dollar's up? I don't know. I'm not really sure. It's just wasn't the ideal day for uranium to break out. Doesn't surprise me it's down. It's down quite a bit though for uranium. It's just the bulls might be a bit upset because it was looking very, very strong. It just needed one little close here above 22.6-ish, 22.62 would be really good above this little candle here. And then you rush this area sideways and then breach. So I hope it goes lower because I haven't got any uranium, but I still think it's strong. Can't argue against that. Gold and silver, absolute smackdown. So for me, okay, so we went down, that's for sure. It's a shame we were venturing higher. Look at that, even hit the 80s at one point. Smash, dollar goes up, markets go down, gold goes down. Okay, support and resistance. So for support, obviously we're looking at the downside here. The resistance remains. So for me, resistance 1985-ish, let's say, but it's more about support. So this zone here, basically where we hit today, pretty much a little lower, 1940-ish, right? You could say it's 1938. You could say it's well, today's low, 1942, but 1940, give or take $2 or $3. That seems to be support. We've also got this ascending. So if we do go lower, like 1930, that could end up being support. So I'm just going to leave this fat target here to sort of cover the area. And I think today was pretty much touching support, the sort of the start of support. So let's see what happens tomorrow. I think the dollar, the DXY at least at 102 should equal this area here. We're not there yet. So, but if we go to 103 on the DXY, let's look out. Maybe we still stay within this ascending. If we take out this ascending and start to go lower, that's why I've got this one down here. It'll really be the low of these tails, I reckon. So 1900 plus, it's a nice big number. I'll even add a little horizontal line to keep it a bit clearer. This is now irrelevant. So that's what I see for gold on the way down, simply 1940, 1900. Silver, I'm not covering the way up because it's looking bearish just from, today's price action, but we know where the way up is. It's really 1980. For silver, we basically touched also a bit like gold. We touched, and to be honest, silver should be all the way down here. If it was to follow gold, it should be around 23.2, but it's not, it's all the way up here. So that's kind of bullish. But look, it was a bad day, down over 3%, gold down over 1%. But, we are sort of back here at this 24 zone. So that's not too bad, to be honest. But let's see, I've seen silver do this before where just the next day makes up for it and bam, we go lower. But if we reverse here, it could be okay. Silver is just retraced a bit more and it looks okay, and then we could still do that 26 run, but for that you'd need gold to really curl here, go sideways and break out, and for that you'd really need the dollar to hit resistance. So let's see, that could have been a shakeout. That happens sometimes, where the FOMC comes out, it's a nothing burger, and the next day you have a bigger move because of the FOMC. This time I don't think it was because of the FOMC, but ultimately everything is a byproduct of these rate hikes, and all rate hikes, all central banks. So there you go, smash the GDX, GDXJ. Look at that. GDXJ does not have a gap to fill, the GDX does, and it filled it. The bad thing is that it closed at low of day, so it looks like it wants to continue lower. I mean, next support would really be this zone. I haven't even drawn it in. The sort of 30 is a nice round number. It's also where the low of this candle, but if we go even lower, it'd be the test of this descending. So just to be a bit more accurate now there, this didn't hold at all. It just kept on going. I'll leave it though, because it should be resistance on the way up if we do go back up. I could add another descending line here, but I'm not going to do that. I'll leave this one here. It's going to take several days to get to test this 33 zone, that's for sure. But yeah, on the way down, you could say 30 is a nice number. Let's see. I'll just leave it here to make sure I know it's not the biggest support, but really the test, the back test of this descending, but you wouldn't want it to go all the way back down there. That's given up a lot out of this pump. It's really the whole, just a pump and dump almost. So that wouldn't be great to see, but at the moment, when you close at low of day, it looks like there's more downside. GDXJ, there's no gap to fill, but if there was a gap, it would have been here and we would have filled it. Also closed at low of day. Same sort of chart pattern, you know. If we have more downside tomorrow, it would be the back test of this, which is pretty much the same thing as this horizontal line, which is pretty much giving back the whole pump. So I hope that it just reverses before there. It could obviously find support randomly. It could coincide with gold and silver, right? I mean, if gold rebounds now and starts to curl around 1940 or just below, that means GDX, GDXJ just curling where it is. It wouldn't have to go all the way back down and back test this line, of course. So it depends more on gold and silver, I reckon. And it depends on the dollar and also interest rates. The market's still not sure. At the beginning of the day, I saw, well, I wasn't there. I was actually flying, but I noticed at the beginning of the day, gold, silver, and the markets were not acting in correlation. So or positive correlation. Well, let's just say the markets were going down and the markets were going up and gold and silver were going down. So they were acting in opposite directions. So I'm not going to look too much at the markets as a reason for gold to go down if it does go down tomorrow. So I'm really going to be looking at the dollar and interest rates and gold and silver to judge the miners. But today the miners got smashed. Bitcoin didn't watch it. Just looking at it now, to be honest, still bearish. I reckon we're going to go back down to 20,500. I mean, look, it didn't go up with the markets. And it started to go down despite the markets going up. And now the market's going down. It's going down too. So for me, Bitcoin is just weak and needs to go lower. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm absolutely exhausted. Tomorrow I'll make a much better video. So, but I'm back to my usual setup. Good luck tomorrow.